The charity student I had been sponsoring for 10 years just got into a university near my house. He asked if he could crash at my place for a few days to get used to the city before the semester started. In my past life, I readily agreed. I not only bought him all kinds of daily necessities, but also prepared a brand new MacBook and an iPhone as a reward for his hard work. But when he saw them, his face darkened instantly. Liam, I used to think you were just some average middle-class guy. I actually felt grateful to you. I didn't expect you to be this rich. Giving me just this cheap stuff seems a bit insulting, don't you think? And that $300 monthly allowance you promised is a joke. It needs to be at least $3,000. I refused him on the spot and told him that if he found it too little, he could find someone else to sponsor him. Seeing my firm stance, he immediately apologized, claiming he was just making a joke. I thought he had learned his lesson. I was wrong. That very night, while I was working late at the office, he slipped a massive dose of sleeping pills to my 3-year-old daughter. Then, he crawled into my wife's bed. By the time I found out, my daughter was already dead from an overdose. I was consumed by rage. But during our physical confrontation, he pushed me off the balcony, sending me plummeting to my death. Afterward, he used his sweet talk to seduce my wife, got her pregnant, and successfully took over my position, stealing my entire estate. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day the charity student called. Hearing his request to stay at my place, my face remained dead calm. Sorry, Tristan. My house isn't open to strangers. Also, since you're now an adult, you'll have to figure out your own tuition and living expenses from now on. Before I could even hang up the phone, my wife, Chloe, snatched it right out of my hand. Her voice turned incredibly sweet as she spoke into the receiver. Tristan, don't mind Liam. He's just exhausted from work today and in a bad mood. It's just staying over for a few days, of course you can. I'll pick you up from the station tomorrow. She hung up and turned to glare at me, her voice filled with annoyance. Liam, what the hell is wrong with you? You've sponsored him for 10 years. What's a few more years of college? You should finish what you started. The poor boy came all this way for school. He doesn't know anyone here. What's wrong with letting him crash on our couch for a few days? I snatched the phone back and looked at her coldly. I said no, Chloe. And I mean it. It's my money. I give it to whoever I want. If I don't want to, no one gets a single dime from me. Tristan's whimpering, victim-playing voice immediately came through the speaker. Liam, Chloe, please don't fight because of me. It's my fault. I didn't think this through. I didn't mean to disrupt your family's life. I won't come, okay? Liam, please don't be mad at Chloe. Please, I beg you, don't cut off my tuition and allowance. I really want to go to college. I let out a cold laugh. Cut the act, Tristan. My decision is final. With that, I hung up. Chloe's face darkened instantly. Did you take the wrong meds today? How can you be so heartless? Tristan is such a sweet, sensible boy. Why are you pushing him into a corner? I stared at Chloe's face. My mind was flooded with images of her ugly, smirking face when she committed perjury in court in my past life. Tristan was the one who murdered me and our daughter. Yet, to protect Tristan and the bastard child in her belly, she ruthlessly painted me as a depressed, lunatic husband who poisoned his own daughter before jumping off the balcony. An uncontrollable wave of pure hatred surged from the depths of my soul. I pointed directly at the front door. Chloe, let me make this crystal clear. If you ever contact Tristan again, we are getting a divorce. Chloe froze, clearly not expecting me to take it this far. She sighed and reached out to grab my arm, her tone softening. Liam, don't be mad. I just thought since you sponsored Tristan for so many years, you actually liked the kid. I had no idea you despised him this much. Fine, fine. I promise I won't contact him again. Just stop throwing the word divorce around, okay? I brushed her hand off, not even wanting to look at her. Chloe cleared her throat awkwardly. By the way, the office is sending me on a business trip for a few days. Get some rest at home. I'll bring you a nice gift when I get back. I genuinely thought that without Tristan's interference, I could still keep this family together. After all, my daughter was so young. I didn't want her to suffer the pain of a broken family. But the next afternoon, when I went to pick my daughter up from her after-school art class. Just as I reached the door, the teacher ran up to me. Mr. Vance, what are you doing here? Lily was already picked up by her mom and a young man a little while ago. A horrible sense of dread washed over me. I frantically dialed Chloe's number. The phone rang for a long time before she finally picked up. Chloe. Where the hell did you take my daughter? Chloe's cheerful voice came through the line. Oh, you're off work? I already brought Lily home. There's a huge surprise waiting for you. Hurry back. Ignoring whatever surprise she had, I slammed my foot on the gas and sped home as fast as I could. When I kicked the front door open, Tristan was sitting on my sofa. He was holding a glass of milk, slowly moving it toward my daughter's lips. In my past life, this was exactly what Tristan did when I wasn't home. He crushed a massive amount of sleeping pills, mixed them into the milk, and tricked my 3-year-old daughter into drinking it. By the time I found out, her tiny body was already cold. Pure terror seized me. I rushed over like a madman and slapped the glass right out of Tristan's hand. Get the hell away from my daughter. With a loud crash, the glass shattered on the hardwood floor, spilling white milk everywhere. Lily burst into tears, terrified. I scooped her up, holding her tightly against my chest, my entire body shaking with rage and fear. Tristan gasped, looking at the spilled milk on the floor, pretending to be completely helpless and shocked. Hearing the commotion, Chloe ran out of the kitchen. Seeing the mess and our crying daughter, she screamed at me. Are you out of your mind? I glared at Tristan with venom in my eyes, then turned to demand an answer from Chloe. I asked you, why is he in my house? Chloe quickly pulled Tristan behind her back, shielding him. My business trip was cancelled. Tristan just arrived at the train station, so I picked him up on my way back to have dinner with us. What is your problem? I looked at her coldly. Chloe, do you treat my words as a joke? What did I tell you yesterday? If you contact him again, we are divorcing. Hearing this, Chloe lost her temper completely. You are being absolutely ridiculous. I brought Tristan here because I wanted you to see how amazing and talented this boy is. If you just spend a few days with him, you'll change your mind. I'm trying to save your 10-year investment from going down the drain, and this is how you treat me? You're threatening me with divorce. Tristan peeked out from behind Chloe, his eyes red, looking incredibly wronged and stubborn. Liam, please don't blame Chloe. It's all my fault. Both of you are my saviors. I don't want you guys to fight because of me. I'll leave right now. I won't get in your way. He made a show of grabbing his suitcase, but stopped right at the front door. As for my tuition and living expenses, don't worry, Liam. I'll find a way. Even if I have to steal or rob, I will get the money. Chloe immediately grabbed Tristan's arm, her heart breaking for him. Tristan, don't say such foolish things. Don't worry. Even if he doesn't sponsor you, I will make sure you finish college. Then she turned and glared at me with absolute hatred. Look at what you've done. I thought you were a generous, noble man. I didn't realize you were so petty and narrow-minded. You are pushing a good kid into a life of crime. I let out a cold, mocking laugh. Whether he went to steal or rob was none of my business. I wasn't the one forcing him. Seeing that I remained silent, Chloe sighed. You've been working too much overtime lately, so I'll let this slide. I know you're just talking out of anger. I'm going to take Tristan out for a nice dinner to calm him down. Stay home and cool your head. And stop using divorce as a threat. Lily is only 3. If she grows up without a mother, she'll be laughed at by all the other kids at preschool. With that, she dragged Tristan out the door. Before leaving, Tristan turned back and shot me a quick look. That look was filled with smugness and pure provocation. Not long after, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe on Snapchat. Since you don't want Tristan staying at the house, I'm taking him to a nearby luxury hotel for now. I'll take him around the city for a few days to clear his head. You should spend this time reflecting on your behavior. I stared at the screen and let out a cold laugh. Reflecting? Oh, I definitely needed to reflect. Reflect on how blind I was to have married such a piece of garbage who constantly backed an outsider over her own family. Chloe's heart was completely rotten. Since that was the case, there was nothing left to say. I dialed my lawyer's number immediately. Gary, draft a divorce agreement for me. I need it done as fast as possible. Then, I called a private investigator I knew well. I need you to investigate 2 people for me. My wife, Chloe Vance, and a college student named Tristan. Over the next few days, Chloe didn't contact me, and I thoroughly enjoyed the peace. But looking at my daughter, I couldn't help but feel anxious. This house was no longer safe. Who knew what disgusting tricks Tristan would pull next? With that in mind, I quickly packed a few of Lily's clothes and daily necessities. I put her in her car seat and drove straight to my parents' house. Just as I arrived, my phone buzzed with 2 photos from Tristan. The first photo showed a massive, luxurious bed in a 5-star hotel. Laid out neatly on it were a brand new MacBook Pro, an iPhone 15 Pro Max, several luxury watches, and a few designer men's suits with the tags still on. The second photo showed 2 hands clasped together. On their ring fingers were matching Cartier love rings. I didn't even need to guess whose hands those were. It was Chloe and Tristan. Looking at the photos, I chuckled. Tristan probably thought he had landed himself a super rich sugar mama. But what he didn't know was this. The only reason we lived in a penthouse and drove luxury cars was because I worked my ass off, pulling crazy overtime to become the vice president of my company. Meanwhile, Chloe had zero ambition. She had been working the same dead-end, lazy receptionist job for years. Her monthly paycheck, after taxes and insurance, was a pathetic $1,500. And she sent every single penny of that to her toxic, male-favoring family. I only gave her a credit card because I didn't want her to feel embarrassed when she went shopping with her friends. I never expected she would use my hard-earned money to play sugar mama to a broke college kid. I called the bank immediately and froze the card. My mom came out of the living room. Seeing my dark expression, she walked over with concern. What's wrong? You look awful. Did you and Chloe have a fight? I didn't want my parents to worry, so I took a deep breath and forced a smile. It's nothing, Mom. Just a minor issue at work. I might be really busy for the next few days, so I was hoping you and Dad could watch Lily for a bit. My dad walked out of his study and scooped Lily into his arms. Don't worry about her. Go handle your business. But remember, if you're dealing with something difficult, don't keep it to yourself. Your mother and I will always have your back. If things get too tough, just come home. We can still support you. Hearing my dad's words, my eyes welled up with tears. In my past life, after my death, my parents couldn't bear the grief of losing both their son and granddaughter. They both passed away shortly after. In this life, I would never let that tragedy happen again. Leaving my parents' house, I drove back to my apartment complex. Just as I parked my car and got out, I ran right into Chloe and Tristan. Chloe's face was livid. The moment she saw me, she charged at me. Liam. What the hell is your problem? Why did you freeze my card? I looked at her coldly. Let me remind you, Chloe. That is my card. Do I need your permission to freeze my own credit card? Chloe's face flushed red with anger, completely speechless. Seeing this, Tristan stepped forward and wrapped his arm around Chloe's shoulder. What do you mean, your card? Liam, don't think I don't know the truth. Chloe told me everything. You only enjoy this rich lifestyle because of her hard work over the years. I didn't expect you to be such an ungrateful leech, trying to steal Chloe's money just because you're married to her. He turned to Chloe, his face filled with dramatic pity. Chloe, this kind of man doesn't deserve you. He's just dead weight. You should divorce him right now. I sneered in my mind. A few days ago, he was playing the polite kid, and now he was calling her Chloe so naturally. It was the evening rush hour, and many neighbors were returning home. Hearing the loud argument, they began to gather around us. Seeing the crowd, Tristan's eyes turned red. He pointed a finger at me, shouting dramatically. Everyone, please listen to this. He promised to sponsor my college education. But right before the semester started, he told me that if I wanted the money, I had to obey him. He wanted me to sleep with the rich, older women he introduced me to. If Chloe hadn't stepped in to save me out of the goodness of her heart, I don't know what I would have done. With that, Tristan covered his face, looking like he was traumatized and deeply victimized. The neighbors' looks toward me shifted instantly. Oh my God, he looks like such a decent guy. Who knew he was doing something so disgusting behind closed doors? You can't judge a book by its cover. He looks so handsome and professional, but his heart is absolutely rotten. Exactly. He has a daughter of his own. How could he be so cruel to another kid? Listening to the whispers, Chloe took a step forward, a smug smile playing on her lips as she whispered to me. Hear that, Liam? Everyone sees what you are. I'm warning you, unfreeze the card right now, and I might help you clear your name before this gets out of hand. The whispering among the gathering crowd grew louder, like the dry rustle of autumn leaves. Several neighbors, people I had exchanged polite nods with in the elevator for years, were now looking at me with a mixture of disgust and morbid curiosity. Tristan remained huddled behind Chloe, his shoulders trembling in a display of practiced vulnerability. He looked down at his scuffed shoes, the picture-perfect image of a bright, underprivileged youth crushed under the heel of a wealthy predator. Chloe stood tall, her chin tilted upward, basking in the sudden moral superiority. She believed she had won. Her eyes held a venomous spark of triumph. As she whispered her ultimatum, waiting for me to panic, to beg her to quiet him down, to hand over the black card just to save my reputation. Instead, I took a slow, deep breath, letting the tension in my shoulders melt away. I didn't yell. I didn't lung at Tristan. I simply reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen to open my banking app. You want the card unfrozen, Chloe? I asked, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet courtyard. Of course I do, she snapped, raising her voice so the onlookers could hear. You can't just cut off your family because of a petty tantrum. You owe Tristan his education, and you owe me respect. Let's talk about what I owe, I said calmly. I turned the phone screen toward the nearest group of neighbors, Mr. Henderson from 4B and Mrs. Gable from the penthouse opposite ours. Since everyone here is so invested in our family dynamics, let's look at the numbers. I swiped to the account details. This is my primary account. It holds the funds from my salary as the vice president of operations at my firm. Over 95% of our household income comes from this account. Chloe's monthly take-home pay is exactly $1,500. Every single cent of her paycheck goes directly to her brother's bank account in her hometown. She hasn't paid a single mortgage payment, utility bill, or grocery bill in 7 years. Chloe's face drained of color. Liam, shut up. What are you doing? This is private. Why should I shut up? I asked, turning to the crowd. My wife is accusing me of financial abuse, and her guest here is accusing me of coercion. Let's look at the supplementary card. I just froze. I tapped on the transaction history, holding it up so Mr. Henderson could see the bold letters. 3 days ago, a charge of $4,000 at the Ritz-Carlton. 2 days ago, $5,000 at an Apple store. Yesterday, $12,000 at Cartier. All charged to my supplementary card, authorized under Chloe's name. The neighbors shifted. The murmurs changed tone instantly. Mrs. Gable squinted at the screen, her eyebrows knitting together. 12,000 at Cartier? Mrs. Gable muttered. For a charity student? And as for Tristan's claim, I turned my gaze directly to the boy, who had stopped trembling. His eyes were darting toward the edge of the courtyard, looking for an exit. He says I tried to introduce him to older women for money. That is a serious allegation. In fact, it's a federal crime. I swiped to my contacts and dialed 3 digits, 911. I pressed the speakerphone button. No. What are you doing? Chloe lunged forward to grab my phone, but I stepped back, easily dodging her grasp. The operator's voice crackled through the speaker. 911, what is your emergency? Yes, hello, I said, keeping my eyes locked on Tristan. I am at the Oakwood Luxury Apartments courtyard. A young man named Tristan is currently accusing me of attempting to facilitate human trafficking and solicitation. I would like to request an officer to dispatch to our location immediately to take a formal statement and initiate a full criminal investigation into these claims. I am fully prepared to hand over my phone, my financial records, and undergo any questioning required. Tristan's face went entirely white. His hands, which had been clutching Chloe's sleeve, dropped to his sides. Wait, no. Tristan stammered, his voice losing its victimized pitch and turning high and panicked. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean it like that. Sir, are you in immediate danger? The operator asked. No, the individual is standing right here, I replied smoothly. But since he is accusing me of a felony in a public space, I believe it's best we let the police handle the report. He is currently refusing to leave my property after being asked multiple times. Liam, hang up the phone. Chloe screamed, her voice cracking. Are you insane? You're going to ruin his future. Tristan didn't wait. He grabbed the handle of his suitcase, turned on his heel, and practically bolted toward the street, abandoning Chloe in the middle of the courtyard. The neighbors watched him run, the illusion completely shattered. Mr. Henderson let out a low whistle, shaking his head. Well, that didn't look like an innocent boy to me. I'm canceling the dispatch, I told the operator, apologizing for the false alarm before hanging up. I looked at Chloe, who was standing alone, panting, her face a mask of humiliation and fury. Get your things out of my house by tomorrow, I said, my voice dead and cold. If I see you or him near my daughter again, the next call to the police won't be a warning. Without waiting for her reply, I turned around and walked back into the lobby, leaving her to face the stares of the neighbors alone. The next morning, I sat in a high-rise office downtown, the city sprawling out behind a massive wall of glass. Across the mahogany desk sat Gary, my divorce attorney, and Mark, a private investigator I had retained years ago for corporate compliance, who now worked independently. Gary slid a thick stack of papers across the desk. The divorce petition is ready, Liam, Gary said, adjusting his glasses. Given that the penthouse was purchased entirely with your premarital assets and the mortgage has been paid solely from your separate bank account, her claim to the property is incredibly weak. Furthermore, with the evidence of financial dissipation, specifically the hotel stays, the Cartier rings, and the luxury goods purchased for a third party, we can easily argue for an unequal division of any joint assets in your favor. What about custody? I asked. My chest tightened at the thought of Lily. In my past life, her small, cold body had been the price of my blindness. I would burn the city to the ground before I let anyone touch her again. Sole physical and legal custody, Gary said firmly. We will file an emergency motion between her bringing a non-family member with no background check into the home against your express wishes, and the public altercation yesterday. We have a strong case that she is creating an unstable environment for a 3-year-old. But Mark has some information that might turn this into an open and shut case. Mark, a quiet man with tired eyes and a sharp tailored suit, opened a manila folder and laid out several printed documents. Your charity student is a piece of work, Liam, Mark said, tapping a photo of Tristan. His real name is Tristan Miller. He grew up in a small town 3 hours from here. But the story he told you about being an orphan living in Poverty? Complete fabrication. I leaned forward, my jaw tightening. Fabrication? His parents are alive and well. They own a successful local construction business, Mark explained, sliding a property record sheet toward me. They aren't billionaires, but they are comfortably upper middle class. Tristan was expelled from his private boarding school 3 years ago for extorting a classmate. He threatened to release compromised photos of the boy unless his family paid him $50,000. The school covered it up to avoid a scandal, but he was quietly dismissed. I stared at the documents, a cold fury washing over me. For 10 years, I had sent monthly checks, bought textbooks, and funded a lifestyle for a boy I thought was starving in a rundown village. What about his admission to the university here? I asked. Mark let out a dry chuckle. He was never admitted. I contacted the registrar's office this morning. The acceptance letter he sent you was a high-quality forgery created using a template from a graphic design forum. He never even applied. He just wanted a ticket to the city, a free luxury apartment to live in, and a wealthy sponsor to bleed dry. And Chloe? I asked, though deep down, I already knew the answer. Mark sighed, sliding a second set of printouts across the desk. They were screenshots of Snapchat messages, dated over the last 6 months. They didn't just meet yesterday, Mark said. Tristan reached out to Chloe online 6 months ago under the guise of thanking her for your continued sponsorship. He quickly realized she was insecure, felt ignored by your busy work schedule, and was highly susceptible to flattery. He began love-bombing her. He called her his savior, his muse, and told her she deserved a man who truly appreciated her beauty and intellect. My stomach turned as I read the messages. Tristan, I can't wait to be in the city with you, Chloe. We don't need Liam. Once I'm there, we'll find a way to make him pay for everything we deserve. Chloe, just hang in there, sweetie. I'll make sure he keeps paying the tuition. Once you're settled, we can figure out how to get rid of him. He's so obsessed with his work, he won't even notice. They had been planning this. In my past life, I thought Tristan's murder of my daughter and me was a sudden, desperate act of violence when his greed was thwarted. But looking at these messages, it was clear, they had been plotting to push me out of the picture from the very beginning. Chloe wasn't just a fooled sympathetic bystander, she was an active participant in my ruin. Keep compiling everything, I told Mark, my voice dangerously calm. I want a digital forensic trail that cannot be disputed in court. Gary, file the papers. Serve her at her workplace. Understood, Gary said. What about the frozen credit card? Keep it frozen, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. Let's see how long their epic romance lasts when the bill comes due. The Ritz-Carlton was not accustomed to scenes, but on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the lobby of the 5-star hotel became the stage for a very quiet, highly embarrassing drama. Chloe stood at the front desk, her designer handbag clutched tightly in her hand, her face flushed a deep, ugly crimson. Tristan stood a few feet behind her, pretending to look at his phone, though his eyes darted nervously toward the security guard standing near the entrance. What do you mean, declined? Chloe whispered fiercely to the receptionist. Try it again. It's a black card. There is no limit. The receptionist, a young woman with a perfectly professional, unbothered expression, slid the metal card back across the marble counter. I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance, but the card has been flagged by the primary account holder as stolen. The transaction cannot be processed. Furthermore, we have outstanding charges for your room, the room service from last night, and the valet service. The total is currently $4,800. We require an alternative form of payment immediately, or we will have to involve hotel security. This is ridiculous. Chloe hissed. My husband is the VP of Vanguard Holdings. This is a mistake. Let me call him. She frantically dialed my number. I watched the call pop up on my phone screen while sitting in my office. I declined it, sending it straight to voicemail. She tried again. Declined. She sent a flurry of texts. Chloe, Liam, pick up the phone. I am at the hotel and they are threatening to call the police. Unfreeze the card right now. Don't do this to me. Chloe, Liam. Please. I don't have any money. I replied with a single text. Liam, use your own salary. Oh, wait. You sent it all to your brother. Desperate, Chloe turned to Tristan. Tristan, do you have a card? Just to cover the incidentals for now? We can sort this out with Liam later. Tristan scoffed, taking a step back. Me? Chloe, I'm a poor student from the province, remember? Where would I get $5,000? But the MacBook? The iPhone? The watches we bought, she pleaded, her voice rising in panic. We can return them. Or you can pawn them. Tristan's face hardened. The sweet, boyish warmth she had fallen in love with vanished, replaced by a cold, calculative sneer. Return them? No way. Those were gifts, Chloe. You gave them to me. They're mine. Now, Tristan said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Besides, you told me. Your husband was a pushover who would do whatever you wanted. You said you had him wrapped around your finger. Now we're getting kicked out of a hotel like common street rats. You lied to me. I didn't lie, she cried, tears finally spilling over her eyelashes. He's never been like this before. I don't know what's wrong with him. Figure it out, Tristan spat. Because if I get a criminal record because of your broke ass, I'm going to make sure everyone knows you were the one who dragged me into this. Before she could answer, two burly hotel security guards stepped forward. Ma'am, please step away from the desk, the lead guard said, his voice polite but unyielding. If you cannot provide a valid method of payment, we will have to escort you to the manager's office while we contact the local police department. Chloe looked around the lobby, desperate, but there was no one to save her. She had to hand over her personal debit card, the one linked to her checking account. That held her meager savings of $800. The transaction cleared, leaving her account balance at exactly $12.42. The remaining $4,000 was put on a high-interest store card she had opened years ago and forgotten about. They were escorted out of the hotel into the pouring rain, their luxury luggage piled onto the wet sidewalk. Tristan didn't even look at her as he hailed a cab. He threw his suitcase into the trunk. Tristan, wait. Chloe cried, grabbing his arm. Where are you going? We're in this together. Tristan shook her hand off with disgust. Together? With what money, Chloe? You're broke. Your husband is divorcing you. You're useless to me. He slammed the cab door in her face, leaving her standing in the rain, drenched, humiliated, and utterly alone. 2 days later, Chloe was served with the divorce papers at her receptionist desk at the local dental clinic. According to Gary's assistant, who coordinated the service, Chloe had tried to tear the papers up in front of her coworkers, screaming that I was trying to ruin her life. Her outburst was so loud and disruptive that the head dentist fired her on the spot to protect the clinic's reputation. She was now jobless, homeless, and flat broke. With no other options, she had crawled back to her parents' house, but her toxic family, upon learning she no longer had access to my bank accounts and could no longer send them monthly allowances, locked the door in her face. They told her she was a fool for losing a wealthy husband and that they had no room for a useless mouth to feed. Eventually, she rented a tiny, mold-infested studio apartment in the worst part of the city, using the last of her credit limit to pay the deposit. I spent those days in absolute peace. I worked regular hours, cooked dinner with my parents, and spent every evening playing with Lily. She was thriving, her laughter filling my parents' living room, a sound that healed the jagged, bleeding wounds in my soul. But I knew the peace wouldn't last. Parasites like Tristan and Chloe don't just go away quietly. They fester. On Friday evening, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I picked it up, pressing the record button. Liam. Chloe's voice came through, sounding hollow, exhausted, and entirely broken. Please, Liam. Let's talk. There is nothing to talk about, Chloe. You'll receive the court date for our custody hearing next week, I said coldly. Please, I beg you, she sobbed. I made a mistake. Tristan, he manipulated me. He lied to me about everything. He's a monster, Liam. He's been threatening me, demanding I get money from you, or he'll release private photos of us to my former employers and the court. That sounds like a personal problem, I replied. You chose him over your husband and your daughter. You made your bed. I was stupid. She shrieked. But Lily is my daughter too. You can't take her away from me. If you take her, I have nothing left. I'll kill myself, Liam. I swear I will. If you are feeling suicidal, Chloe, I suggest you call a hotline, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. But do not use our daughter as a bargaining chip. You didn't care about her safety when you brought a sociopath into our home. You didn't care about her when you left her with him so you could go to a luxury hotel. You have lost the right to be called her mother. I will fight you, she roared, her desperation turning into venom. I'll tell the judge you abused me. I'll tell them you starved me financially. I'll make sure everyone knows what a monster you are. Go ahead, I said. My lawyers are eager to present the Cartier receipts, the Snapchat logs, and Tristan's criminal record to the judge. Have a good evening. Chloe. I hung up, but the recording was saved. Another nail in her coffin. A few hours later, Mark called me. His voice was tense. Liam, we have a development. Tristan has been spotted hanging around your parents' neighborhood. My heart stopped. A cold dread, familiar and terrifying, seized my chest. What is he doing there? I demanded, my grip tightening on the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He's been watching the house from a rented sedan, Mark said. I think he's desperate. He owes money to a couple of local loan sharks he borrowed from to buy those luxury suits and watches before your card got frozen. They're looking for him. He knows you're his only way out, and he knows Lily is your weakest point. Is my family safe? I have two of my best guys watching your parents' house right now, Mark assured me. But Tristan doesn't know that. He's going to make a move soon. We need to draw him out before he does something desperate. No, I said, my eyes darkening as the memories of my past life flashed before my eyes, the image of my daughter's cold face, the feeling of falling from the balcony. We don't wait for him to make a move. We set the trap. The plan was simple, relying entirely on Tristan's greed and Chloe's utter desperation. Through a mutual acquaintance of Chloe's, I leaked a piece of information. I was planning to take Lily out of the country for a long-term business trip in 3 days, and I had withdrawn $50,000 in cash from my business account, keeping it in the safe at my old penthouse apartment to pay off some final, local expenses before leaving. To a normal person, this would mean nothing. But to Tristan, who was being hunted by loan sharks, and Chloe, who faced total ruin, it was a golden, final opportunity. If they could get into the penthouse, crack the safe, or catch me off guard, they could take the cash and disappear. Better yet, if they could get their hands on Lily, they could force me to sign over my entire estate. On Saturday night, the trap was set. My parents and Lily were safely tucked away in a secure, guarded hotel under assumed names, protected by Mark's team. I sat alone in the dark living room of my penthouse. The only light came from the city skyline bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The apartment felt vast, cold, and haunted by the ghosts of a life that never happened. At 1:30 a.m., a soft, scraping sound came from the front door. I slipped into the shadows of the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. Not out of fear, but out of a cold, electric anticipation. The door clicked open. Two figures slipped into the foyer, silhouetted against the hallway light. Hurry up, Chloe's voice whispered, trembling with terror. The safe is in his study. Let's get the money and go. If he wakes up. Shut up, Tristan snapped, his voice tight and vicious. He was holding a heavy metal crowbar. If he wakes up, I'll deal with him. He's just a soft, corporate suit. He won't do anything. They crept into the living room, their footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. Suddenly, the overhead recessed lights flickered on, flooding the room with a brilliant, blinding white light. Chloe shrieked, covering her eyes. Tristan spun around, raising the crowbar, his face contorted in a snarl. I stood at the end of the hallway, my hands in my pockets, looking at them with a calm, steady gaze. Looking for this? I asked, holding up a thick manila envelope filled with dummy paper. Liam. Chloe gasped, taking a step back, her eyes wide with terror. We were just. Save it, Chloe, I said. You broke into my home. That's burglary. Tristan looked at the envelope in my hand, his eyes burning with a manic, desperate hunger. He didn't care about the laws, the consequences, or the past. He was a cornered rat, and he knew this was his only way out. Give me the money, Liam, Tristan said, taking a step toward me, brandishing the crowbar. Give me the money, and we leave. If you don't, I'll make sure you never see your daughter again. Are you threatening me, Tristan? I asked, stepping forward, showing no fear. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you, he sneered, lunging forward with a sudden, vicious speed, swinging the crowbar directly at my head. In my past life, I was caught off guard, consumed by grief and physical exhaustion. But tonight, I was ready. I ducked beneath the swing, the metal bar whistling past my ear. I drove my fist directly into Tristan's ribs, hearing a satisfying crack as the breath exploded from his lungs. He stumbled back, gasping, but recovered quickly, his face twisted in a murderous rage. He lunged again, tackling me to the floor. We rolled across the hardwood, crashing into the coffee table. Tristan's fingers clawed at my throat, his face inches from mine, his eyes wild and bloodshot. You think you're better than me, he screamed, his grip tightening on my neck. You're just a bank account. I'm going to take everything you have. I choked, my vision swimming for a second, but the memory of Lily's cold, lifeless body flashed in my mind, fueling me with a terrifying, primal strength. I grabbed Tristan's wrists, twisting them outward with a brutal yank. He cried out in pain, his grip breaking. I slammed my forehead into his nose, a sickening crunch echoing through the room. Tristan fell back, clutching his bleeding face, howling in agony. Chloe stood in the corner, screaming hysterically, completely paralyzed by the violence. Before Tristan could get back up, the heavy oak front door was kicked open. Police. Don't move. 4 armed officers rushed into the room, their weapons drawn, followed closely by Mark and Gary. Tristan was instantly pinned to the floor, his face slammed into the hardwood, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. He thrashed and screamed, spitting blood onto the floor, but he was completely subdued. Chloe fell to her knees, sobbing, her hands raised in surrender. I didn't do anything. It was all him. He forced me to do it. Please, Liam, tell them. I'm your wife, she wailed, reaching out to me. I stood up, wiping a smear of Tristan's blood from my cheek, and looked down at her with absolute disgust. You are not my wife, I said. You're a criminal. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and merciless. With the mountain of evidence provided by Mark, including the Snapchat logs, planning my ruin, the forged admission letter, the financial records of grand theft, and the high-definition security footage of the break-in, the state prosecutor had an open and shut case. Tristan Miller was sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security prison for attempted robbery, burglary, extortion, and assault with a deadly weapon. The loan sharks he owed money to were waiting for him on the outside, but he would have a long, painful time in a concrete cell to think about his investments. Chloe Vance was convicted as an accomplice to burglary and grand theft. Due to her lack of a prior criminal record, she was sentenced to 4 years in prison, with the judge citing her complete lack of remorse and her willing endangerment of her own child as aggravating factors. During the final divorce and custody hearing, which took place via video link from the county jail, the judge stripped Chloe of all parental rights, granting me sole physical and legal custody of Lily. When the final gavel fell, I felt a weight that had been crushing my chest for 2 lifetimes finally lift. 6 months later, the sun was shining brightly over a quiet park near my parents' house. The air was warm, filled with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. Daddy. Look at me. I looked up from my bench to see Lily running across the green grass, her cheeks flushed with health, a bright, beautiful smile on her face. She was holding a colorful pinwheel, watching it spin in the gentle breeze. My mom sat next to me, patting my hand gently. She looked so much like you when you were young, she said, her eyes shining with warmth. You did a good job, Liam. You protected her. We protected her, Mom, I said, a soft, genuine smile finally reaching my eyes. The past was finally where it belonged, dead and buried. I watched my daughter laugh as she chased a butterfly, her future bright, safe, and entirely ours. I had paid a terrible price in another life to learn who to trust, but in this life, the investment had finally paid off.